"That soil is not yours, sir." Mae Johnson said it from behind the vegetable stand, both hands flat on the wooden counter, her voice carrying across the Saturday morning market the way voices carried when they had been held back for a very long time and had finally decided that holding back was finished. She was 61 years old, dark brown skin, close-cropped silver-streaked hair, wearing the same faded green apron she had worn every market morning for 35 years, the one with the pocket on the left side where she kept her receipt book and the pen with the chewed cap. Her eyes were on the man in the suit who had just told her, in front of 12 other market vendors and perhaps 40 customers, that she had until the end of the month. The man's name was Carter Hale. He was 44 years old, the regional director of Meridian Property Group, and he had driven from the city in a car that cost more than Ezra and Mae Johnson had earned in the previous 3 years combined. He was holding a folder. He was wearing a tie. He was not accustomed to being spoken to in that tone by a woman in a faded green apron. "I beg your pardon?" he said. "That soil," Mae said, and she did not raise her voice, and she did not look away from him, "is not yours. The market ground, the parking area behind it, the strip of land along the eastern fence. None of it is yours." She paused. "And before you show me another piece of paper from the county, I want you to know that I have read every piece of paper the county has produced about this land since 1987, and I know what each of them says, and I know what each of them is missing." Carter Hale looked at the woman behind the vegetable stand. He looked at the stand itself, the wooden structure, hand-built, with the names Ezra and MAE painted in faded white letters across the front beam. He looked at the tomatoes and the squash and the collard greens arranged in the careful way they were always arranged, prices handwritten on small cards in the same handwriting that had been writing those prices for 35 years. Then he looked at the folder in his hand. "Mrs. Johnson," he said carefully, the way a man spoke when he was deciding between condescension and caution and had not yet chosen, "the county records clearly establish—" "The county records," Mae said, "begin in 1931. A pause. "This land," Mae said, "has a history before 1931. Carter Hale looked at her for a long moment. Then he closed the folder and said, very quietly, that his legal team would be in touch. He walked back to the expensive car. He drove away. The market continued around Mae, the sounds of Saturday morning, the other vendors and the customers who had stopped moving during the exchange and were now slowly beginning to move again, the way water moved again after something had passed through it. Mae looked at her tomatoes. She thought about her grandmother's Bible. She thought about the thing her grandmother had said the night she placed it in Mae's hands. She thought, not yet, but soon. Ezra Johnson had proposed to Mae on the 3rd Saturday of October, 1983, at the vegetable stand his grandfather had built in 1952, using the same words his grandfather had told him to use. "I can't offer you much, but I can offer you everything I have, and I will never stop adding to it." Mae had said yes before he finished the sentence. They had been married 40 years. In those 40 years, they had done what the Johnsons had always done in Clover County. They had worked the land. They had grown things. They had brought what they grew to the market on Saturday mornings and sold it for what it was worth and not a penny less. They had raised 2 children in the house at the end of Meridian Road, a house Ezra's father had built by hand in 1961 that still had the original kitchen cabinets because Mae had said those cabinets were staying until the house fell down around them, and the house had not fallen down. They were not wealthy people. They had never been wealthy people. But they had the stand, and they had the house, and they had the land their family had worked since before Clover County had been called Clover County, and those 3 things were, in every way that mattered to Ezra and Mae Johnson, enough. The stand had been there when Ezra's grandfather built it. It had been there when Ezra's father took it over at 22. It had been there when Ezra himself stood behind it for the first time at 16, learning from his father the specific art of arranging vegetables so that the most beautiful ones were visible from the road. It had been there through droughts and good years, and the year the creek flooded and took out half the eastern field, and they had to sell the truck to cover the loss. It had survived all of it. What it had not survived, not yet, not entirely, was Meridian Property Group. Meridian had arrived in Clover County 14 months ago with the specific efficiency of an organization that had done this before in other places. They had bought the old mill site first, then the hardware store building, then 3 of the 4 corners of the town square. They had announced a revitalization project in language that the local paper had reprinted without question, language about investment and growth and bringing Clover County into the 21st century. The market ground was the last piece. It sat at the center of the town, 6 acres of flat land that had been a market since 1889, when the county's farmers had first gathered there on Saturday mornings to sell what they'd grown. It was not a romantic space. It had a cracked asphalt parking area, a row of permanent stalls along the east fence, and a center section of open ground where vendors set up their own structures. It smelled of produce and soil and the particular combination of things that had been happening in the same place for a very long time. Meridian wanted to build a mixed-use development on it, retail on the ground floor, apartments above, a parking structure in the back. They had presented the county with a proposal. The county had approved it in a meeting that lasted 40 minutes. No one had told the vendors. The first notice arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, 14 months ago. It was placed on each vendor's stall before the market opened. A letter on Meridian Property Group letterhead, informing the recipients that the county had authorized the development of the market ground, that the current vendor arrangements would be terminated effective 90 days from the date of the letter, and that Meridian thanked them for their years of service to the community. Ezra read the letter standing at the stand. He read it twice. Then he folded it and put it in the left pocket of his overalls and did not speak about it until Mae arrived at 9 o'clock with the truck. Mae read it once. She looked at Ezra. She looked at the stand. She looked at the letter once more. 90 days, she said. That's what it says. Mae was quiet for a moment. She looked at the faded white letters on the front beam of the stand. Ezra and Mae. Ezra's father had painted them the year Ezra took over the stand. The paint had been refreshed twice since then, but always the same letters, always the same place. "Go get the Bible," she said. Ezra looked at her. He understood what she meant. He had understood for 35 years what she meant when she said that, since the night her grandmother Celestine had pressed the Bible into Mae's hands and told her what was inside it and made her promise. "It's time?" he said. "Not yet," Mae said, "but get it out of the box. I want it where I can reach it." Celestine Beaumont had been born in Clover County in 1919, 2 years before the events that had shaped everything that followed. She had lived to 93, which was long enough to see a great many things happen, and long enough to develop a very clear sense of which things were permanent and which things only appeared to be. She had given Mae the Bible on a Sunday evening in October 1988, Mae and Ezra's 5th wedding anniversary, the year Celestine had decided she was old enough to stop waiting. The Bible was large, black-covered, the kind that had been produced in the 1940s with heavy paper and gold-edged pages. Celestine had carried it from the house her own mother had lived in, a house that no longer existed, on a piece of land that had been taken in a way that the county records of 1931 described as a voluntary sale, and that Celestine had spent 70 years knowing was not a voluntary sale. Inside the Bible, folded between the pages of Deuteronomy, where her mother had placed it, was a document. The document was a deed. A land deed, dated April 14, 1921, registered in the name of Solomon Beaumont, Celestine's father, Mae's great-great-grandfather, covering 6 acres of flat land in the center of what would become Clover County, recorded with the county registrar's office in the first week of April 1921, and witnessed by 2 names that were legible, and one that had been partially obscured by time. The market ground, 6 acres, Solomon Beaumont's name on the deed. Celestine had told Mae the story the night she gave her the Bible, the full story, which was a long and painful one, of the events of October 1921, when Solomon Beaumont had been told that the deed he held was fraudulent, that the land had never legally been his, that the registrar's office had made an error and the error was being corrected, and that if Solomon caused any further difficulties, the correction would be made in ways that would affect more than the land. Solomon had not caused further difficulties. He had a wife. He had 3 children. He had understood what the threat meant in October 1921 in Clover County, and he had made the calculation that men in his position made in that time and place, that his family's survival was worth more than 6 acres of land, and that the land could be reclaimed by other means, by time, by documentation, by the patient accumulation of evidence in a world that might eventually be ready to receive it. He had kept the deed. He had put it in his wife's Bible. He had told his wife, "Keep this. Don't show it to anyone here, but don't ever throw it away. The time will come." His wife had kept it. She had given it to her daughter. Her daughter had given it to Celestine, and Celestine, after 70 years of keeping it, had given it to Mae. With one instruction: don't use it until you have no other choice, because the day you use it, everything changes, and not all of it changes the way you plan. Make sure you're ready for all of it, not just the part that goes right. Mae had kept the Bible for 35 years. She had kept it in a cedar box under the bed, in the room where she and Ezra slept, the same room where she had looked at it sometimes in the middle of the night, not opening it, just holding the box, feeling the weight of what was inside it, and the weight of what it meant, and the weight of whether the time had come. She had waited 35 years for the answer to be yes. The 90 days passed the way 90 days passed when you were fighting something that had more lawyers and more money and more county officials than you did, slowly at first, and then very quickly. The second week, a county health inspector arrived at the stand on a Wednesday, not a Saturday, a Wednesday, which was not a market day, but Ezra and Mae had been there anyway because there were things to do and the stand needed them. The inspector was a young man with a clipboard and the specific careful expression of someone who had been told what to find and was going to find it. He cited 4 violations. 3 of them concerned the wooden structure of the stand, a beam he described as potentially load-bearing and insufficiently certified, a canopy attachment he said was non-compliant with current code, and a drainage issue in the paved area within 6 feet of the stand. The 4th violation was about Ezra's produce display, a shelf that was 4 inches lower than the currently required minimum height for commercial food display. Ezra read the citation sheet. He looked at the inspector. "This stand has been here since 1952, he said. "I understand that, sir," the inspector said, "but the violations need to be addressed within 14 days. "Who sent you?" Ezra said. The inspector's expression did not change. "Routine inspection cycle," he said. He left. Ezra and Mae looked at the citation sheet. They looked at each other. They did not say the name of the person who had sent the inspector. They did not need to. The 3rd week, the county sent a letter informing them that the market operating agreement was being reviewed for renewal, and that during the review period, all existing vendor arrangements were technically in a provisional status. The letter used the word provisional 3 times. Both Ezra and Mae understood what provisional meant. You are here at our discretion, and we are reminding you of that. The 4th week, a man arrived whom neither of them had seen before, heavyset, a Clover County Commissioner's lapel pin. He walked slowly around the stand, looking at it from different angles, the way a person looked at something they were deciding the fate of. He did not speak to them. He looked at the stand. He looked at the ground. He walked back to his car. That evening, the Clover County Courier published a letter to the editor, signed by the owner of a construction company whose name appeared in the county's development approval documents. The letter argued that the holdout vendors were impeding economic progress and that the county needed to take stronger action. The 5th week, someone spray-painted "Go Home" on the side of the stand overnight. Ezra painted over it on Saturday morning before the customers arrived, using the same dark green paint he had used to touch up the awning posts the previous spring. Mae watched him paint. When he finished, she handed him a coffee. "Thank you," he said. "Come on," she said. "The tomatoes need setting out." The 6th week, their bank called. The loan on the house at the end of Meridian Road, used as collateral for an agricultural credit line they had carried for 12 years, had been flagged for review. The loan officer was apologetic and could not explain exactly what had triggered the change. Mae thanked her and called Diana Cole. Diana called back an hour later. "Meridian has financial relationships with 3 of the county's major lending institutions," she said. "I can't prove the flag was deliberate, but the timing is interesting." "What do we do?" Mae said. "Nothing yet. It's a review, not a default. Keep paying on schedule." A pause. "Mae, they're trying to wear you down. You know that." "Yes," Mae said. "Are you worn down?" Mae looked out the window at the back field, the collard greens in their rows, the squash coming up along the fence, the tomatoes staked and heavy with fruit. "No," she said. The 7th week, Carter Hale came with the enforcement officer and the county attorney's letter and the $250 daily fine. Ezra and Mae had not been passive during those 90 days. They had done every legal thing available to them. They had attended the county commissioners' meeting and spoken during the public comment period, which was 3 minutes. They had filed a formal objection to the development approval, which was received and acknowledged and then placed in a file. They had contacted the Clover County Historical Society, who had expressed sympathy and done nothing. They had contacted the state representative's office, which had sent a form letter. They had contacted a lawyer in the city, who had told them the county's approval appeared to be procedurally sound and that challenging it would cost more than they had. At the end of the 90 days, Meridian sent a second letter. The letter said that the vendor arrangements were now terminated, that the market ground would be fenced for construction preparation within 30 days, and that Meridian thanked the vendors for their cooperation. Ezra and Mae did not cooperate. They opened the stand the following Saturday, as they had opened it every Saturday for 35 years. They arranged the tomatoes and the squash and the collard greens. They put the handwritten price cards in place. They tied the faded green awning up at 7:15, the way they always did. The other vendors did not come. 11 of the 14 regular vendors had accepted Meridian's offered compensation, a small sum, described in the letter as a goodwill gesture, and had made arrangements to leave. 2 others came for one more Saturday and then did not come back. Only Ezra and Mae remained. The market that had operated in Clover County since 1889, 134 years, was, on that Saturday morning, 2 people and a wooden stand with faded white letters. Carter Hale came back on the 3rd Saturday of their continued operation. He came with a county code enforcement officer and a letter from the county attorney's office. The letter cited unauthorized commercial activity on land that had been reassigned by county order and imposed a daily fine effective immediately. Ezra read the letter. He handed it to Mae. Mae read it. "How much?" Ezra said. $250 a day, Mae said. Ezra was quiet for a moment. He looked at the stand. He looked at the tomatoes. "We'll pay it," he said. Carter Hale looked at him. "Mr. Johnson, this isn't sustainable. The fines will accumulate. The construction timeline is fixed. I understand this is difficult, but—" "Carter," Ezra said. He did not say it unkindly. He said it the way a man said the name of someone he had decided to be honest with. "How old are you?" A pause. 44. "I've been coming to this market since I was 6 years old," Ezra said. "My father brought me the first time in 1966. He put me behind that counter and he said, 'You stand here, you look people in the eye, and you give them what they paid for. That's it. That's the whole job.'" He looked at Carter. "I've been doing that job for 51 years, not because it's easy, because it's right." He paused. "The fines are $250 a day. We'll pay them. Come back next Saturday." Carter came back the following Saturday with a higher fine and a notice from the county judge. The week after that, a local television crew came and filmed Mae arranging the collard greens. The week after that, the story was picked up by a regional news outlet and then by a national one. The week after that, the parking area around the stand was full of people who had driven from 3 counties over to buy vegetables from Ezra and Mae Johnson. The fines continued. Meridian continued. The county continued. And Mae said nothing about the Bible. Not yet. It was a woman named Ruth Alcott who changed the timeline. Ruth Alcott was 78 years old. She had grown up in Clover County, moved away at 22, raised her family in another state, and returned 10 years ago after her husband died. She came to the stand on a Thursday morning, not a market day, but Mae had been there every day now, a decision she and Ezra had made together without discussing it, in the way they made most of their important decisions. Ruth sat on the folding chair Ezra kept beside the stand for customers who needed to rest. She bought 3 tomatoes. She looked at Mae for a long time. "I knew your grandmother," she said. Mae looked at her. "Celestine," Ruth said. "We were girls together, before I left." She looked at her hands. "I've been following what's happening here, in the paper, online." She paused. "I know about the deed, Mae." Mae was very still. "Celestine told me," Ruth said. "Not the details, but she told me Solomon had a deed. She told me she'd kept it. She told me she'd given it to you." She looked up. "I'm telling you this because there's something you might not know about 1921. Mae sat down across from Ruth. "My grandfather was the county registrar in 1921, Ruth said. "His name was Thomas Alcott. He was the one who registered Solomon's deed." She was quiet for a moment. "He was also the one who was told to unregister it. He told my father about it, years later, before he died. He said it was the worst thing he ever did. He said he had a copy made before he did it." Mae looked at her. "A notarized copy," Ruth said. "He kept it because he felt guilty. He never knew what to do with it. After he died, it went into a box of his papers. The box went to my father. My father died. The box went to me." She reached into her handbag. She placed a manila envelope on the counter between them. "I've had this for 11 years. I've been trying to figure out what to do with it for 11 years. She looked at Mae. "I think I figured it out." Mae looked at the envelope. She looked at Ruth Alcott. "Why now?" she said. "Because I'm 78 years old," Ruth said simply. "And I'm tired of carrying things that belong to other people." Mae picked up the envelope. She held it for a long time without opening it. "My grandmother told me to wait until I had no other choice," she said. "Do you have another choice?" Ruth said. Mae looked at the stand, at the faded white letters, at the tomatoes arranged the way her husband arranged them every morning before the sun got too high. "No," she said. "I don't." She put the envelope in the pocket of the green apron. She picked up her phone and called Ezra. "Come to the stand," she said, "and bring the Bible." The lawyer's name was Diana Cole. She was 49 years old, a property rights attorney from the city who had built her career on exactly the kind of case that everyone else said was too old, too complicated, and too expensive to win. She had read about Ezra and Mae in the regional paper. She had driven to Clover County on a Tuesday morning, bought a bag of tomatoes, and introduced herself. "I don't want money," she had said. "I want the case." Ezra and Mae had looked at each other. "Why?" Ezra said. Diana had looked at the stand, at the faded white letters, at the price cards in Mae's handwriting. "Because somebody should have brought this case 30 years ago," she said. "And nobody did. And I'm tired of nobody doing it." She had been working the case for 6 weeks when Ruth Alcott's envelope arrived. When Mae called her that Thursday, Diana drove back to Clover County the same afternoon. She sat at the small table in Ezra and Mae's kitchen, and she looked at the original deed from the Bible, and she looked at Thomas Alcott's notarized copy from the manila envelope, and she was very quiet for a long time. "Mae," she said finally, "yes. Do you understand what you have here?" "I think so," Mae said. "You have the original deed, witnessed and dated 1921, in Solomon Beaumont's name." Diana looked at the envelope. "And you have a notarized copy made by the county registrar himself, with his signature, before he removed the original from the county records." She paused. The removal from the county records was the fraudulent act, not the deed. The deed is real. The deed has always been real. "Yes," Mae said. "The market ground has been registered in county ownership since 1931, based on a record that was fraudulently altered in 1921. Diana looked at her. "This land never legally left Solomon Beaumont's ownership, which means it never legally became county property, which means the county had no legal authority to sell it or assign it to Meridian." Ezra was at the kitchen counter. He turned around. His expression was the expression of a man hearing something he has spent 50 years waiting to hear and is now deciding what to do with having heard it. "What does that mean?" he said. "It means," Diana said, "that Meridian's development approval is based on a fraudulent title chain going back to 1921. It means every transaction involving that land for the past 100 years is legally questionable." She paused. "It means we file an emergency injunction tomorrow morning to stop the construction, and then we file the full claim." Mae looked at her husband. Ezra looked at the Bible on the table between them. He thought about Solomon. He thought about his grandfather. He thought about his father painting the letters on the front beam of the stand. He thought about the first Saturday he had stood behind that counter at 6 years old and been told, "You stand here, you look people in the eye, and you give them what they paid for." "File it," he said. The injunction was granted on a Friday morning. The construction equipment that had arrived at the market ground the previous Monday was ordered to stop. The chain-link fence that Meridian had begun installing along the eastern boundary was ordered to remain in place but inactive. Neither the construction nor the market could proceed pending resolution. Carter Hale issued a statement saying that Meridian was confident in the validity of their title and would vigorously contest any claim. The county attorney's office issued a statement saying the county was reviewing the matter. Diana filed the full claim the following Monday. The claim named 3 parties: Meridian Property Group, Clover County, and a list of historical successors to the original fraudulent transaction. It sought not only title restoration for the 6 acres, but a full accounting of all revenue generated from the fraudulent title chain since 1931, including tax revenues, sale proceeds, and development fees. The number, when Diana's research team calculated it, was large enough that the financial press noticed. The county attorney called Diana on Wednesday. He used the word settlement in the first sentence. Diana called Mae. "They want to settle," she said. "What do they want?" Mae said. "Title to the market ground restored to the Beaumont Johnson Family Trust. All current fines forgiven. A payment, a significant one, in lieu of the full historical accounting." Mae was quiet for a moment. "The market," she said. "It stays as a market." "That would be part of any settlement terms, yes." "Not part of. The market stays as a market. That's not negotiable. The other vendors get their stalls back, at the rents they were paying before Meridian arrived." "Mae?" "That's not negotiable, Diana." Diana was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "All right, I'll take it back to them." The county accepted within a week. Meridian, facing a title chain challenge that their own lawyers told them had a very high probability of success at trial, accepted within 2 weeks. On a Thursday morning in October, 35 years to the month after Celestine had pressed the Bible into Mae's hands, Diana called with the final word. "It's done," she said. Mae was at the stand. It was not a market day. She was there because she had been there every day for 6 weeks, through the injunction and the filing and the waiting, arranging the tomatoes and the squash and the collard greens, and opening the stand and looking people in the eye and giving them what they paid for. She put the phone down. She looked at the stand. At Ezra and Mae. She thought about Solomon, who had put a deed in a Bible in 1921 and told his wife, "The time will come." She thought about Celestine, who had kept it for 70 years and pressed it into Mae's hands and said, "Don't use it until you have no other choice." She thought about Thomas Alcott, who had made a copy because he felt guilty and carried the guilt for the rest of his life, and passed it to his daughter, who passed it to Ruth, who drove to a vegetable stand on a Thursday morning after 11 years. She thought about Ezra's father painting the letters on the front beam. She thought about the thing her grandmother had said that she had not told anyone, the thing Celestine had added at the end of the instruction, quietly, almost as if she were saying it to herself. "The land was never the point, baby. The land was just the proof. The point was that we were here. We built things. We stayed. They tried to make us invisible, and we stayed visible. That's what you're keeping, not the soil, the staying." Mae put her hands flat on the wooden counter. She looked at Clover County market ground, the cracked asphalt, the eastern fence, the 6 acres that Solomon Beaumont had bought in 1921, and that had been taken from him, and that had come back 102 years later. She began to set up for the next Saturday. The market reopened on the first Saturday of November. 11 of the 14 original vendors came back. The 12th came back the following month, once she had arranged her affairs. The 13th and 14th had moved on and did not return, but 2 new vendors took their places, a young woman selling honey from hives she kept at the edge of her property, and a teenage boy whose mother had taught him to make jam from the mulberries that grew along their back fence. Ezra arranged the tomatoes the way he always arranged them. Mae put the price cards in place in her handwriting. She tied the faded green awning up at 7:15. Ruth Alcott came at 8 o'clock and bought 3 tomatoes, the same as she always did now. She had become a regular. She sat in the folding chair beside the stand and drank the coffee Mae made in the small thermos she brought every Saturday and watched the market fill. "Your grandmother would have liked this," Ruth said. "Yes," Mae said. "She would have." Carter Hale did not come. Meridian Property Group had announced, in the weeks following the settlement, that they were reassessing their development strategy in Clover County. The announcement was accompanied by the departure of Carter Hale from his position as regional director, a departure described in the company's press release as voluntary. The county commissioners had held 3 meetings in the past month. The meetings had been attended by a record number of residents. At the 3rd meeting, the commission had voted to establish a formal review process for any future development proposals affecting historically significant market or agricultural land in the county. Diana Cole had not attended any of the meetings. She had returned to the city the week after the settlement. She had called Mae once since then to confirm that the title documents were in order and that the Beaumont Johnson Family Trust had been properly established. At the end of the call, she had said, "Mae, for what it's worth, this is the best case I've ever worked on." "Why?" Mae had said. "Because it was already won," Diana said. "It was won in 1921. It just took 100 years for the rest of the world to catch up." On the Saturday after the market reopened, Ezra's granddaughter came for the first time. Her name was Celestine, named, on Mae's insistence, after the woman who had kept the Bible. She was 4 years old, dark brown skin, close-cropped hair held back with 2 small yellow clips. She stood behind the counter with her grandfather in the way that Ezra had once stood behind the counter with his grandfather and his father, and she watched the people come and go with the specific serious attention of a child who understood that something important was happening and was paying full attention to it. At noon, when the morning rush had slowed to the quiet midday pace, Ezra crouched down beside her. "What do you think?" he said. Celestine looked at the tomatoes. She looked at the customers. She looked at the stand, at Ezra and Mae, painted on the front beam. "When will my name be on it?" she said. Ezra looked at Mae. Mae looked at her husband. Between them, something passed that did not have a word for it. The specific weight of all the years, and all the Saturdays, and all the mornings, and the Bible in the cedar box, and Solomon's deed, and Thomas Alcott's guilt, and Celestine's instruction, and the faded green apron, and the chewed cap pen, and the price cards in Mae's handwriting, and the letters painted on the beam that had been repainted twice and would be repainted again, and the soil under the cracked asphalt that had been Solomon Beaumont's and had come back and would stay. Ezra looked at his granddaughter. "Soon," he said. Celestine nodded, satisfied, the way a child nodded when given a promise by someone they knew kept promises. She picked up a tomato and held it carefully in both hands and looked at it with the serious attention she brought to everything. The market continued around her, the sounds and the smells and the Saturday morning light on the cracked asphalt of the 6 acres that had been here since 1889 and would be here long after all of them were gone. The land was not the point. The staying was the point. And the Johnsons were still here. End of script. 6 months after the settlement, Diana Cole received a call from a law professor at the State University who had read about the case in a legal journal article she had submitted. The professor wanted to include the Beaumont Johnson case in a course he taught on property rights and historical land claims. He wanted to know if Mae would be willing to speak to his students. Diana called Mae. Mae thought about it for 3 days. Then she called Diana back. "Yes," she said, "but I have a condition." "What condition?" "Ezra comes with me. We both speak, not just me." Diana smiled on her end of the phone. "Of course." They went on a Tuesday in March, a market day, but Ruth Alcott said she would watch the stand, and the young woman with the honey agreed to keep an eye as well. Ezra and Mae drove to the university in the truck, the same truck they had used for 35 years to carry the produce to market, the one with the dent in the left rear panel from 2008 that Ezra had never got around to having fixed because the truck ran fine and a dent was only cosmetic. The classroom held 60 students. Every seat was taken. Several students were standing along the back wall. The professor introduced them briefly. Then he sat down and let them speak. Ezra spoke first. He told the story the way he told all stories, starting from the beginning, in order, without skipping the parts that were uncomfortable. He talked about his grandfather and the stand. He talked about his father and the letters on the beam. He talked about the 90 days, and the inspector, and the spray paint, and the bank call, and the daily fines, and the Saturdays, when it was just the two of them. Then Mae spoke. She told them about Celestine. She told them about the Bible and the deed. She told them about Solomon in 1921, who had made a calculation that his family was worth more than 6 acres of land and had been right about that, and who had kept the deed anyway, because he believed the time would come, and had been right about that too. She told them what Celestine had said. The land was never the point. The staying was the point. She told them what the case had taught her about the difference between justice and the law, that the law had been wrong for 102 years, and that justice had existed the whole time, folded between the pages of Deuteronomy, waiting. When she finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then a student in the second row raised her hand. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, "what would have happened if Ruth Alcott hadn't come to the stand that day?" Mae thought about the question. "We would have found another way," she said, "or we would have kept going until they found a way to stop us, or we would have lost." She paused. "But Ruth came, and Thomas Alcott made a copy because he felt guilty, and my grandmother kept the Bible because Solomon told her to, and I kept the Bible because Celestine told me to." She looked at the student. Things like this don't happen because of one person. They happen because of a chain of people, over a very long time, each one doing one small thing that looked like it might not matter. Solomon kept the deed. His wife kept the Bible. Celestine kept it for 70 years. I kept it for 35. Ruth kept a guilty man's copy for 11 years. She paused. None of us knew it would work. We just kept the thing we were supposed to keep and waited for the right moment. The student nodded slowly. The professor thanked them. Ezra and Mae drove back to Clover County in the truck with the dented rear panel. They stopped at the stand on the way through, not to open it, just to check on it. Ruth was there in the folding chair, reading a book, 3 empty tomato boxes stacked neatly beside her. "Good day?" Mae said. "Good day," Ruth said. "I sold everything on the first table." Ezra nodded. He looked at the stand, at the letters, at the cracked asphalt of the market ground in the late afternoon light. "I need to repaint the beam," he said. "Next spring," Mae said. "Next spring," he agreed. They drove home,